about another episode during the World War I period, which again shows us the type of person he was. Last time we emphasized his Mesiras Nefesh and his going to bat, and his ability, his magnetic personality in bringing others. He's brought Stasovitz over to his team. But I want to show another example of that. There was a big rabbinic meeting. There are some of the great lights of the rabbinic world. Rav Itzla Panovitcher, who was one of the greatest Rosh Yeshiva. Many put him together with Chaim Soloveitchik as being the greatest Rosh Yeshiva of that time, meaning someone who really was Ma'amid Talmidim, Zecher Yitzchak, Rav Itzla, famously and fondly known as Rav Itzla. He'd been Rosh Yeshiva in Slobodka once. Anyway, so they went together to ministers, as things go, and the rabbis were talking, and no one was successful. Then finally, Rav Zalman got up. He said, "What about aflaya? What about treating misfairness?" Rabbanim Yudim hofchim lebaset toch tachim b'chazit. He says that they're cannon fodder. Rabbis are cannon fodder on the front, and priests are totally free. How do anashim maskilim? How do fair wise people like you let this go on? He almost screamed, and he hit the table at the same time. And one of the Sarim Dafka came over and patted him on the shoulder and gave a smile. Again, his magnetic personality, he knew how to say things. And then he brought in his advisor for Jewish factors called Mantov. And Mantov got up and got it out of the Shaila. Just read the story here, it's cute. "I'll ask the rabbis," said the Yoetz, and he knew a little bit. He says, "Is a rabbi a tafkid? Is it a function? Is it a purpose? Or is it a Mamed Ruchani Kadosh? Is he like a holy man? Like by the Komrim. By the Komrim, it's not a functional position, it's a holy man. So what's a rabbi? Right? He said to himself, look, it's a tafkid, it's a purpose, it's a purposeful thing. So now, if it's a tafkid, said Alumdus, if it's a tafkid, look, you don't need the tafkid, as I said last week, because the town doesn't exist anymore. So you don't need that tafkid. If he's a holy man, he's a holy man still. But if his role is a functionary, there's nothing to function because the town doesn't exist. So the Rabbanim all sighed in exasperation, looked like they were going to lose. And the Rav Itzla Panovitch I mentioned before said, and cynically said, I guess he turned to his friends, what a lamdin, azal lamdin, maybe we should give him smicha. That was Rav Itzla's approach. And then Rav Zalman smiled, and he saw there's room now to make a move. And he says, I see in the papers that the mayor of Grodno and the mayor of Kovna met with a minister. And they also switched around roles. And the mayor of Vilna became the mayor of Grodno in an official ceremony. So no one knew where he was going. And he said, we know that Grodno and Vilna are in the hands of the Germans. Right? And the mayor has run deep into Russia. So there's no mashmos to their tafkid. So Rav Zalman says, so why in the world did you make the mayor of Grodno, which doesn't exist in our hands, into the mayor of Vilna, which doesn't exist in our hands? By the way, Vilna was another town, which, like I said about Zettel, I was always changing hands. Vilna always changed hands. I think the joke was that Vilna, the flag of Vilna was a horse on its rear legs. They said it was on the rear legs. When he puts his feet down, it might be in another country. But so he says, so why do you have a mayor of Vilna at all? That's what Zalman asked in front of the Rabbanim and in front of the ministers. So he says, I'll tell you why. You know why? Because you know that it's bad for morale if we give up on Vilna. By us saying that there's a mayor in Vilna means even though the Germans are holding it now, we're saying we're going to come back and Vilna will come back into Russian hands. So the fact that the Germans are there now is meaningless. That's why you keep correctly a mayor of Vilna. And he said, if that's the true, then the same thing by a Rav. If you're going to make all the Rabbanim go to the front, so then everybody will take it as a sign that Russia is sold out on its chances of winning this war back. And all those towns which fell to the Germans will stay in German hands. So don't do it. That's what he said. If you want to show, if you want to show that we've been knocked out, then bring the rabbis to the war. So then there was quiet in the whole room, and then the minister himself started clapping, and everybody enjoyed it. That was so. He says, "Tov, we have nothing to say. Hu tzodek," right? And they got to their tachlit. Now, just to finish this off, and then to end with a comment about this, he freed through this tens of rabbanim. Now, who knows? Could be we have Chazon Ish in Eruvin because of Rav Zalman Sorotzkin. To those who learn Chazon Ish appreciate what that means, and many rabbanim continue because of his wisdom, his pikchus, his magnetic personality, his drive, his mesiras nefesh. By the way, on an interesting note, what happens to people? That was for people who were rabbanim and then lost their rabbanut, as we said, in the Grodin of Vilna way. But there was another thing that they made up rabbanuyot for different people, great Talmidei Chachamim that didn't necessarily have any tafkid ever. They also made up a rabbanus for them, and he did that. Rav Zalman was the central figure in doing that also. Interestingly, there were two people that didn't do that. The Reb Chaim was already very elderly. I think he wasn't up in the whole question. But the great Brisker Rav, we've given a series about, and his brother-in-law Hirsch Glickson were in that danger category. And Reb Chaim held it's the wrong thing to do. The brisk integrity said, because what's going to happen if you start giving bogus certificates? Again, let's just be clear: we don't do anything bogus, but to save, it's mamash b'koach nefesh. So then you do, right? So, but the Reb Chaim said it's even in this situation, it's wrong to do. And for his son, he told his son not to take the certificate because he says if bogus certificates are found out, so then the rabbanim that have real certificates will also be endangered, and the whole operation could fall apart. And therefore, the Brisker Rav and his brother-in-law Rav Hirsch Glickson didn't do it. The Yashrus amazing Yashrus of Brisk. Two Elu Ve'elu Divrei Kim Chaim, of course. But what I do want to comment is, you see this. The reason I spent so much time on this story is, besides being an interesting vignette of history, is also shows so much what Rav Zalman was all about. All these sides of him, the drive, the mesiras nefesh, the befriending and working with many people, the ability to speak, the ability to say bright things, metuchkam things, cunning and clever things, l'tovas Klal Yisrael. This was very, very typical of what we'll continue to see as the weeks go on.